you find adventure at the click of a button, or from the turn of a page, or the casting of a die. Join your hosts, Coniff and Shiloh, on an unforgettable journey. Questing the multiverse.
Shiloh, I'm going to ask you a very straightforward question to start this episode off. And I'm going to ask it to you the same way I asked our dear friend Tested Weevil. And that question is, what is your opinion on Chinese buffets? And this is a serious question because I have some elaboration, but just right out of the gate, Shiloh Waltz, what is your opinion on Chinese buffets?
Probably, I don't think this is an opinion. This is a fact. Probably the number one cause of foodborne illnesses in America. I'm not a fan of any buffets.
Okay.
Unless they're done at a really, really high level and I can get caviar and crazy stuff, because I know that kind of stuff that goes into doing a high-end buffet like that. But, if I'm at a resort or something like that, I'm not going to turn down a really well-done buffet. But, yeah, I don't like any kind of buffet. As a chef, worker of the service industry, I wouldn't recommend it.
Okay.
And that's my opinion.
And he's sticking with it. Well, I have a reason for asking you this, Shiloh, and it's based on something that I recently did. But there's a bit of a backstory, as I've been told I've been long-winded.
Really?
Shiloh's like, no duh. So anyway, and this got me thinking, because in the Midwest, specifically Missouri, there is like an obsession with Chinese restaurants, right? In fact, Springfield, Missouri is known as the birthplace of cashew chicken, which cashew chicken is about as Chinese as American football.
Cashew Chinese chicken salad, yeah.
Yeah, and so, I did read an article once upon a time about why Chinese food, these Chinese restaurants became hugely popular in the U.S. And of course, that deals with immigration and all sorts of things. And it was a very fascinating article, but that's not the point I'm trying to get to. In Missouri, there are Chinese restaurants everywhere, and there are Chinese buffets. And so when I grew up in Indiana, and there was not many Chinese restaurants, and the only one was a China buffet. I'm pretty sure it was literally just called China Buffet. And so my parents would take us there. Of course, it's cheap, and you can fill up the kids easily for cheap. And, so great idea. And of course, like that one had mac and cheese. That one had pizza. And so my younger brother and sister, until they acquired a taste for the China buffet, would eat the Chinese pizza, just pepperoni pizza. And then the Chinese donuts, of course, that always are served at those places. And so I grew up, and that was kind of just, when someone mentioned Chinese food, it was that China buffet, and that's where we'd go. And so all throughout high school, we'd go there. Well, then I come to college down in Missouri, and it's very different. With someone on the floor was like, hey, let's go get Chinese food. I'm like, great, let's do it. I know exactly what I'm going to get. I got a whole routine every single time. Show up. No, you order your entree, and then you choose either noodles or fried rice, and that's that. And so it was a shock to the system, because I was like, where's my options? I have to pay extra for crab rangoon, or I have to pay extra to try like 5 different types of chicken in a different type of sauce. What is this? And so it was just a shock, because I wasn't used to that. Well, this past weekend, I went with my wife on a date. And where did we go? A China buffet. Now, you might be saying, listener, wow, He's real lame if he's taking his wife on a date to China Buffet. And just so
I
you're
didn't say that.
but the thought was there. No, our listeners probably said that. No, so this was a little date, a minor date. We have a nice one coming up this weekend, in fact. We've got some friends that are going to come watch the kids. We're going to go on a date. It's going to be great. The date will be great. Anyway, so this specific date, we go to this China Buffet. And then we went to Barnes & Noble. And there's a story about that, which I won't get into. And then we went to someone's 50th birthday party, Shiloh, at a bar, a pool, a billiards bar.
People live that long?
Case in point, right here. Drinking his coffee. You drink coffee or tea?
Right now, tea.
What type of tea?
Right now, it's like some sort of chai oolong
Here we
thing, black tea. Yeah.
Well,
But I basically drink it like coffee.
that's fair.
So a little bit of creamer, a little bit of sugar.
Nice. I do just honey, but I drink this throat coat.
Honey's good.
It's a nice little diversion. Listener, I hope you're keeping up. So back to the China Buffet we go, and it was everything that I remembered from my childhood. I was able to get the exact things I wanted. We happened to go on the night they have seafood, which I think just really equates to they bring crab legs out, and then there's someone making sushi. Well, it was great. And so my point with all this was I really like China buffets or Chinese buffets. As someone who does not work in the food industry, I feel like maybe I have just more of that like ignorance is bliss situation going on.
Yeah, probably.
But I feel fine. And so I know that I mentioned Weevil at the beginning because I asked him this question, and his commentary was, when we get together at that little get-together, secret get-together happening in the fall, him and I are going to crush some Chinese buffet somewhere in the magical Smoky Mountains. So,
all right.
So there you have it. That's your icebreaker, 15-minute icebreaker. Wow. No, that's not 15 minutes. I can't do math.
No,
10 minutes. 10 minutes of ice breaking. All right. Shiloh, why don't you get us off this China buffet subject and turn our attention to something our listeners actually tuned in to listen to.
More apropos. What have you been up to?
China buffet. Check.
Awesome. That's great.
What about you?
I have been not really playing a lot of video games. I did recently, I guess it was because we discussed Shadows of the Erdtree last episode. I went ahead and bought both, basically the Shadow of the Erdtree expansion plus the base game for PC. I played the original game on Xbox and was like, well, you know what? I think I'm just gonna go ahead and buy the whole thing because I definitely want to play that. And I've had an itching. I don't think itching is
an itching.
Is that a word?
I don't know.
Anyway,
is it?
I've had I'll put it in Southern terms. I've had a hankering to play Elden Ring.
Okay.
And there's something, I don't know, just kind of action, combat-y and fun and
something of a challenge nature, right? Because we haven't played. I'm trying to think back, like when you were first, because I think you streamed it in Discord one of the nights this week, right? Mm-hmm. And I was watching you, and this I'm sure you're about to touch on, but you're way farther than I expected. And two, I really got to thinking, like, you and I haven't really played anything we'd consider like actually challenging since maybe, I mean, Baldur's Gate 3 had its moments, but like Divinity Original Sin 2 was like the last game we played that I would say was
I think that's harder than Baldur's Gate 3. There's some hard stuff in Baldur's Gate 3 but it's a different frame. It's not twitch and action and timing. It's just strategy, and it's different part of your brain that's
Yes.
working. But yeah, I've been having fun. It's just kind of a slow go. Obviously, we've got to wait till June, late June, June 21st, I think, is when the Erdtree comes out. So it'll be a slow burn. I'll just be kind of putzing around doing stuff until then. But I've been primarily watching shows. And I rewatched Dune 1, which we'll get into in a minute, quite a bit. Just saw Dune 2. Again, we'll get into that in a minute. I finished The Last of Us on HBO Max.
Okay.
And at some point we'll touch on that. So lots of sci-fi and fantasy, horror / whatever.
Yeah.
Shows that I've been watching, but haven't really done a whole lot of else other than work and that sort of thing. So yeah. What about you?
Well, I wanted to bring you back to Elden Ring real quick because, like I said, you were a lot further on than I expected, and you had a particular weapon that was a deviation from what you did last time you played. What is that weapon, Shiloh?
Well, this time around, I wanted to go for a confessor type of faith. Maybe a little bit of magic involved. Obviously, you can do quite a bit of stuff with faith.
Yeah.
And so I just found a build online and was like, that looks like fun. And it's just an easy little build. You can go around and you kind of go point A to point B, and it helps if you know the game, obviously.
Yes.
This is not... I guess you could do it if you had no idea what to do in the game, but you'd be struggling because the guide is really fast. Like he's like, go here and then go here and grab this and grab that. I'm like, okay, I can do that. I can do that. It's basically how to get to Marguerite and defeat him fairly easily, and have some really good starting equipment and a good build to go on from that. So I think I'm going to change because I saw a build on Fextra Life that uses a flail and a great shield.
Ooh.
Yeah, it looks like a lot of fun. It sounds really kind of dorky, but it is pretty neat because it's they use cold on it, and you do a flail attack that basically just spins you around, and it staggers the enemy because of all the cold and stuff.
Nice.
And it's pretty cool looking. And the great shield, you can kind of... Have you ever used a great shield?
No, and I didn't even know that there was a flail.
You kind of hunker it down. You kind of slam it into the ground. You hide behind it, and then you can push out.
Okay.
And it's pretty useful. You have to time it right, obviously. Like everything in Elden Ring, it's all about timing. For a while there, I had to remind myself, I can't just dodge roll at the first moment I think they're going to attack, because that's what I'm used to in a lot of like Guild Wars 2 and ESO. You can just kind of, all right, they're about to swing, I'm going to dodge and get out of the way. But no, you have to time it pretty well, or that backhand is what will get you every time. So,
or they stagger the attack. They're like, I'm doing this for the camera.
Then you're like, oh man, they got me. But it's been a lot of fun. It's this tree. Let's see, it's a spear called tree spear or something dumb like that. I don't remember the name of it.
It's a giant,
but it's
red oak or redwood tree.
Yeah, it's just it does you do a little. It comes with a what are they, Art of War or whatever.
Yes,
one of those little abilities that increases your holy damage if you kind of L to it, and so it's fun. I've been playing on a controller on the PC. So I've got the best of both worlds. So
that's what I would do, play controller. And I guess when the game launched, that was one downside to it, is it wasn't optimized well for mouse and keyboard. But I don't know why you'd play a game like that without a controller. So
yeah, it seems kind of weird. But
whenever I get to it, controller all the way on PC.
Yeah.
So,
and there's a mod too.
Yes.
I'll mention the mod.
That's a good call.
That our friend Tempest sent me that I've downloaded. I haven't tried it out yet, but it enables you to play with friends. So it basically turns Elden Ring into a co-op game.
Full co-op, though.
Full co-op, yeah. So it's not, you can't just go into, invade into your friend's realm and then kind of help them along. And it's very limited, I think, with that. But this is pretty much a full co-op. I think it's up to 4 players or something. So I'm sure it makes the game quite a bit easier. But I know that they've ramped up the difficulty a little bit to to kind of tune for that. But I'm sure it's not. I mean, because if you have someone, I'm sure someone's going to get the crap end of the stick and get all the aggro. But that's half the game. Like if you have summons and stuff, grab your aggro from you, the game can be quite a bit easier. So we'll see. But I think just playing it through with friends would be a lot of fun. Just have all the crazy stuff that goes on in that game.
Yeah.
I don't know how death would work. Could you revive your friends? I don't know. Or does it just everyone die? I don't know how that works. So
that'll be. We'll have to find out. I know that Newbie and I, for the new listeners, my friend Newbie from childhood, he's a big Dark Souls fan, and prior to me ever playing Elden Ring, the only Dark Souls experience I had was actually playing Dark Souls 3 with him. And to your point, when you're playing a normal From Software, a Dark Souls game, and you do co-op, you have to use an item to summon your friend to your world. Yeah. And then if you perish, they automatically get teleported back to their realm. So be curious to see how they adjust for that in this. If maybe you just go to your waypoint and they're just stuck fighting the boss by themselves. Not a waypoint, but
I guess,
the last bonfire you went to, or Site of Grace, whatever they're called in Elden Ring. So
Shrine of Meridia or something like that.
Well, I don't know.
Something like that. I don't know. Meridia, that's an ESO thing. Oh, one of those things.
The Meridia's beacon. All right, so you asked me what I've been up to, and aside from China buffets, I have been playing basically 3 different games, and they're probably the same 3 as the last time, but it's Helldivers 2, World of Warcraft, and Fortnite. Now, Fortnite just came out with a new season, and I know a lot of people that listen to this podcast are probably like, ugh, Fortnite, rolling their eyes, and I can understand that. I went on a lengthy tangent on one of the episodes this year about how I see Fortnite as kind of the modern day MMO, or it is something to that effect. And I won't get into that now. But what I will say is Fortnite continues to innovate their own game. They continue to make some pretty big deals as far as cross collaborations go. To that point, they are doing an Avatar: The Last Airbender like mini pass at some point within the next few months. And that's a big deal. I mean, not just because it's Avatar, but Avatar: The Last Airbender is a very good animated show that I watched when I was younger, and again in college, and then again as an adult, and showed the kids. And Netflix just came out with a live action version of the show to mixed reviews. There are some problems that I have with it, but my point being that, this game that they created is now this multiverse experience, like Lego, this racing game. And then for me, more importantly, Fortnite Festival. There's no Taylor Swift songs yet, Shiloh, but they did add Paramore, Misery Business, Feel Good Inc. by the Gorillaz, and then a whole lot. Numb by Linkin Park. So they're delving into the deep of the popular songs from the past 20 years, and it'll be interesting to see how it evolves over time. Now, maybe many of you are like, what the heck is the point of Fortnite Festival if you're just playing songs? It's like Rock Band, and that is the point. For me, it's very fun because I play on the hardest difficulty. I 9 times out of 10 will 100% the song without missing a note. I have a brain for musical rhythm and that sort of thing, and it's just very relaxing to just sit here and listen to music, but not just like listen to music, pretend I'm keyboarding away while playing it. And I can play a real instrument, so if that was ever like, all the you're not a boomer, you're like what are you?
Gen Xer.
Yeah. So like all the boomers are like, Gary, go learn a real instrument. Well, I did, Uncle Joe or Grandpa Joe, and I know several. So get off your lawn or my lawn or somebody's lawn. So I really enjoy Fortnite Festival anyway. It's just a fun way to relax listening to music. And as I said, they're adding more songs. So for a while it was a bunch of songs. I was like, I don't care about these. And now they're adding better ones. So
that's cool.
That's really what I've been up to, along with the new season stuff. But then World of Warcraft, I'm level 56 or 57 on my monk. I am basically almost done with let's see, there's the Jade Forest, the Karsang Wilds, and then the Valley of the Four Winds is kind of that bottom eastern side. And I am almost done with the Valley of the Four Winds. And it goes to show you that, and I have been doing, like I did all the quest lines in the Jade Forest and Karsang Wilds. I wonder if you would have to like specifically try to follow only the main story quest, kind of keep up with it, because at this rate I'm gonna reach it.
Yeah, you'll probably, like me, I missed almost an entire zone.
I'll miss like two. And you know what, it's fine, because I could still go do it. I would just start one-shotting everything easier, which maybe that would be fun. I don't know. But I've said it before on another episode or whatever, maybe just in talking to you and other friends, but I really like how leveling in World of Warcraft is. And it really helps them that they've got, 20 years of expansion storylines that you can go level with. That was always like a chore in other games, is like, all right, got to get to the end game level, the highest level, so I can then actually start playing the game. Certainly ESO. I would say even Guild Wars 2, but so little of that game is the 1 to 80 grind that you're not really missing anything. So,
yeah.
But with WoW, like so much of the game.
ESO is very good about that, though. Like I would make new characters and then just level them out in the new expansions.
Oh, you mean like 1 to 50?
Yeah.
I guess that's a good point. I guess for myself with ESO, I always hated the 1 to 50.
Yeah, we did on the same character.
No, I know that. I mean, but like even leveling the other characters, like my Magblade or what was the other one?
I didn't mind it.
My Necromancer. So I played, I'll be honest, I played my Stamblade 95% of the time. Until that Vatashran Hollows, and that was too hard on Stam. Magic was easy mode, so.
Ooh, yeah.
And then Helldivers, I need not speak much on Helldivers 2. Just go to YouTube and type in Helldivers 2 funny moments and picture those, but with my voice and a New Zealand fellow's voice. And that'll be, you can just kind of envision in your head my experience in Helldivers 2. Yeah. Okay, let's move on and start talking about the good stuff, which is all Arrakis, baby.
Yeah. Well, you want to start with Dune Awakening? I figured we'd go straight into the MMO, survival MMO that's coming out, and then we can move on to the movies / books / world / lore. I've got a bunch of notes here, so
it's very fresh in your mind.
Yeah,
I did want to say, let's talk about the game, as you said. Mm-hmm. But then before we get into the movies, we'll do a last call for spoilers sort of thing. Okay. And then in the show notes, so if you're on Spotify, they'll be in like the episode notes. I assume those land on Apple Podcasts and all these other places. I don't know 100%. Is what, whatever. But I'll put a little time stamp for when the Fellowship of the Ring book report starts. So that way, for those of you who have yet to see this most recent movie, you won't, nothing will be spoiled. As far as the books go, I haven't even read the book, so if we keep that to a minimum, at least like Dune Messiah and stuff. So.
Oh yeah, I haven't read any of that. So.
Okay.
Just talking about like a few subtle differences, stuff that that I've noted and stuff. Anyway, so Dune Awakening, I know this piqued my interest a while back. It's been kind of in development for a while, like most MMOs that just take forever.
Because it's listed as an MMO too, right? And that was
it's a survival MMO.
And that's the part that's like, oh, so you're telling me there is an MMO coming out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
and
what's
it's slated to be released this year. It's coming out for PC, Xbox Series X and S, and PlayStation 5. It's on Unreal Engine 5, and so it should be optimized really, really well. They've got the lumens lighting technology. They've showcased that off a little bit, where even in player housing, which they're going to have, obviously, it's a survival MMO. You would expect, a house or a base that you can build yourself, and that's going to be in the game, as well as vehicles. They mentioned like speeders and ornithopters, the little dragonfly helicopter looking things that you see. I know that they featured them in Flight Simulator. That's
yes.
They had a tie-in with that. But yeah, the date is to be announced. I've signed up for a closed beta, I guess. I don't know if I'll ever get in. Probably not. But so the game is released by Funcom, and if you're not familiar with Funcom, they've released currently on their slate is Conan Exiles.
Oh, okay.
There's the crafting game, but they've also, I think their first release was an MMO called Anarchy Online, and then Age of Conan, which I played a ton of, and that's the game that I was trying to get you and Swine and Maddie to come play with me, and it's got fatalities. The game, it actually is aged pretty well. It still has sort of it's an interesting fighting mechanic where you kind of attack from the left up, straight ahead or to the right and then down. And so you're kind of trying to, and the enemies are trying to go, so you're kind of trying to match what they're doing, and that's how you get the most amount of damage, is like trying to break their shields from, and they don't necessarily have quote unquote shields, but they're, that's where they're attacking from. So you're trying to take advantage of that. So, and they also had fatalities in that game, which were both gruesome and pretty awesome. And I think you could actually see other players' fatalities. I can't remember. I think so. Yeah. But, yeah. And then, the Perfect World, not the most recent, The Perfect World. This was I played a little bit of this game. It didn't run on the computer I had back, I'm guessing late 2000s, like 2008, 2010, somewhere around there. But it was a kind of an urban, we were talking about urban folklore, and this is it's a modern mystery. There's a lot of like occult stuff. You join up a particular faction. It's kind of a modern day setting. They're crazy paranormal and stuff going on, and you investigate. The quest system in the game was almost like you would go out on a case and kind of try to solve this mystery. Very, very cool game. It was a little, I don't know about clunky, but I don't think it really hit its strides at the right time, or just couldn't find its niche. But
gotcha.
Anyway, but I have a lot of faith in the developer as a whole, because of my previous experiences with them have been pretty good. So I think that they could be on the right path for a pretty exciting game here. But so it's a survival game at its core, with the environment. Obviously, if you're on Arrakis, you've got food to worry about. You have water. You have heat, a lot of heat. You've got to take shelter. You've got sandstorms. And of course the sandworms, which the developers have said that there's no way you can't fight sandworms like in the game. Like it's not, they're meant to basically devour you, and they act as a source of tension. Now in PvP, you can, they're going to have PvP zones in the game as well. And there's a system that they've developed where basically a huge sandstorm will completely wipe out a PvP area. I don't know if it's on a weekly basis or maybe bi-weekly or something like that, and it kind of reveals a bunch of new stuff for PvE players, and then the PvP players have to go, and they basically will wipe away any PvP bases and all of that kind of stuff. So it kind of keeps the world kind of going and kind of spinning in a different direction. But they're going to have, what do I got down here?
Sounds exciting.
Yeah, but they're going to have base building. They're going to have, you can be able to craft the thumpers that they use to summon the sandworms. So in PvP, you can actually drop a thumper down, and then hopefully a sandworm comes and destroys your enemies. I mean, all sorts of interesting mechanics. And of course, they're going to have ship battles and all of that stuff. And the one thing I'm really interested to see is how spice will play in the world. So obviously that's going to be some sort of a form of currency, but will it also eventually turn your eyes blue? Will it eventually give you dreams and hallucinations? And because it's a drug just floating around all over Arrakis, and eventually you're going to breathe in enough of it, you'll become kind of a Fremen. But yeah, it's just a really, really interesting game, and I've kind of got my eye on, and yeah.
I know that it might have been in the same stroke that they talked about spice, but that you can be a Bene Gesserit, and then you'll have powers that'll start to manifest and stuff. So it looks really fun. Just one thing is, I wonder how big the world is going to be, because I think MMO, and my current MMO is World of Warcraft. And that world is, it's just huge. Even for today's standards, it's still huge. And of course, I think that's probably because there are no loading screens between any zones on a continent. But it's just massive. So as far as this goes, like if it's the size of say Fallout 76, but it's just all Arrakis desert, I think that would be pretty sweet. Honestly.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what I visualize in my head. Not a huge, you can't overdo the desert. It just would seem pointless, because you'd just be like, oh, there's just a bunch of empty space and me and a bunch of sandworms. Well, let's go. And I just can't see that. So they're going to have to condense it enough, but make it feel big enough to where it feels like an MMO. And of course, support all these big battles. And so the interesting thing to me is that it's going to be a survival game at its core, where you're kind of off the boat. You have a mentor that basically will teach you a certain skill right out of the gate, and I think you can go out into the world and eventually find other mentors that will teach you other skills. But they've got it's you're going to need to do the survival type of things, like craft stuff to basically and build a little hut, and then eventually try to get the Fremen armor, the still suits, and all their technology and all that kind of stuff, and see where it goes from there. But I know at the end game, the focus will be from kind of a more survival of the elements type of game, to where you're surviving the political side of it, much like the books and movies. So I think it has a lot of promise. and especially since they have their teeth into both genres in the MMO space and the survival game space. We'll see. I'm definitely very interested in playing this. So
I know the last thing I was going to say about it is that I did see that there's not going to be a huge emphasis on the religion aspect, and I can understand why, because they're aiming for a more sandbox, because it's Arrakis, but like a sandbox MMO experience where players drive a lot of the decision making and stuff like that. And typically I find those style games, which is kind of what Fallout 76 was trying to do at launch, a bit shallow. But going into this with the expectation of it is a PvP centered experience, survival experience with PV as well, but when I go to play this, I know that I'm going to get into PvP and tell my own stories and all that stuff. So I'm not really too bothered by, and it might just be that I'm not super involved in Dune, but I'm not too bothered by it sort of making some creative license decisions that make it more of a game and less of a adaptation. That's the correct word. So because as we are about to segue into, we got a exceptional adaptation in the form of Denis Villeneuve. Is that how you pronounce that? He's French Canadian, I think. His 2 movies. So it is at this point in time, if you are listening to this and you have no clue what Dune is, you are slightly even interested in watching Dune 1 from 2021 and Dune Part 2 from 2024. Now is the time to skip ahead to the timestamp found in the episode show notes, because it's going to be impossible to tell our thoughts on this movie without spoiling the story. I don't know that we'll get like heavy into spoilers for Dune Part 2, maybe, but there's not so much heavy spoilers in there as there is maybe the first one. I think but it's part of a major piece of the plot, so whatever. So that's your warning. From this point on, we will be talking some spoilers for Dune and Dune Part 2. Yep.
So go see the movies.
Go see the movies.
The books. And then go see.
Or actually, just read the book, because his 2 movies are just an adaptation. And if you're on the YouTube, I have the very fancy Barnes & Noble version of Dune by Frank Herbert. You got the sandworms on the back. I'm holding it up to the camera for our video watchers. There's the ornithopters, if I can get it. Looks pretty neat.
Yep.
That's all. So anyway, this is the book. The first book is what these 2 movies are. I guess the third movie that he wants to do is going to cover the second book, Dune Messiah. So anyway, let us begin, Shiloh. Take us away on a spectacular audio journey of your thoughts on Dune and Dune Part 2. Welcome to NPR. No, I'm just kidding. Not sponsored.
Well, I heard somebody, I wish I could credit them for this quote, but it pretty much sums up what Dune, if you're not familiar with Dune and you just said, I'm just going to listen to these 2 idiots talk about Dune, then you're in the right spot. But I thought that this quote was great because it relates to modern times. But he said, think of Dune as Game of Thrones in space with drugs. And I'm like, that's about right.
Nailed it.
Pretty accurate. Yeah. So
the original Game of Thrones too. I mean, it was Game of Thrones is Dune in Fantasyland without drugs. So really,
but honestly, I wasn't really expecting to become And I guess it's been so long since I, number one, read the book. Number two, saw the original 1984 it's
David Lynch
interesting.
version.
The David Lynch version, which is David Lynch. I mean, it's... I do love David Lynch, but at the same time, like, maybe he wasn't the right person to try to pull this off. I think funny. It has enough psychedelic stuff that he was like, yeah, I want some of that.
He really we said Game of Thrones in space with drugs. He really leaned into
he was like, oh, I'll sign me up.
Drugs part of that.
But, so all those things completely removed. I had this very, number one, foggy. Number two, apprehensive, I guess is the right word. I didn't know. I couldn't remember all about the world, and I just couldn't remember the plot. I couldn't remember. I knew there were sandworms. I knew Kyle MacLachlan was in the first one. I couldn't remember if David Bowie or Sting. Apparently, it's Sting was in the first David Lynch movie. So it's just all very vague, and I wish I could blame it on psychedelic drugs or spice, but I really can't. But yeah, I was kind of floored when I think I bought the first one a while back because I'm like, that looks really good, and I want to refresh my memory of what all this was about, and then watched it and liked it. But then I recently rewatched it, and I kind of paid a lot more attention to it, and was like, okay, all right. And then by the time I'd gotten done with my second watching of the first one, I'm like, all right, yeah, I'm definitely going to go see Dune 2. This was later, at the end of last week.
Yeah.
So when it came to watch the second one today, I was really excited. I was a little nervous about the 2 hour and 46 minute time frame. But honestly, when I was kind of wanting more. And
yes.
I have sat through long movies before, or not even that long, and been like, oh God, can we I just gotta go to the bathroom at home.
Mm-hmm.
Can we just wrap this up, please? And this is, I'm thinking like even Star Wars movies that I've seen, the most recent Star Wars trilogy. I think at one of them I kind of like, okay, let's just wrap this up.
That could be for a multitude of other reasons as well.
Yeah, but this one I ate maybe half my popcorn because I was just kind of glued to, and just everything from. We can go over all. I've just wrote down some notes here, but just if you want to touch on any of these, we can touch. Well, first, let's just go.
Right here, I wanted to say, you saying you wanted more. When the credits finally rolled, I had this sense of, aw,
yeah, like,
really? I'm good. Let's keep going. And that's, again, it's a 2 hour and 47 minute movie. Like, that's a long time. Now, the recliners at the theater were comfortable, and I didn't have popcorn, and I can't do drinks because I didn't want to have to get up to go to the restroom. So no drinks, didn't do popcorn. But yeah, by the credits, I was like, no, I'm ready to see this next movie. Let's go right now.
Man, it's so good. So I wrote down a number of different little points of interest in what we can talk about here for the second one. The first one too. I mean, these are all kind of all encompassing, just Dune, what's going to be a trilogy as a whole.
Yes.
And will eventually bring us into this next little snippet that we're going to talk about. And then that will eventually go into the next little snippet. But
it's all connected.
So acting, the first takeaway was this is a really well done. It's across all facets, but so I can't really think of anything bad about either one of the movies.
I have one thing on that, actually.
Okay.
And it's only really in my memory because of we're doing this thing at work. One of my coworkers is doing this thing at work about multicultural mannerisms, and a part of that she's using as an example when in the first movie Stilgar first meets with Duke Atreides and Jason Momoa's characters there, and
he spits on the table,
and Thanos, whatever the actor's name is about to cut him.
Josh Brolin,
that one, and Jason Momoa's like, no, hold on, and he spits too and says something along the lines of, "Thank you for your gift of your water. We take it in the honor," that was something to that effect, right? Yeah. And but right before that part in that scene, Jason Momoa is giving his recount on how many Fremen there are, how many tribes, whatever, and he says something about like he had to fight someone, and he's like, the word, and it's not as acting, but it's definitely the dialogue for that exact moment is something along the lines of, "I've never fought harder in my life. I almost died." And the way it was delivered was like, this feels really cheesy for how amazing this movie is. So anyway, nothing like that in the second one as far as I can remember, but I distinctly remember that from this first one because I was like, come on, Jason Momoa, you could have delivered a better line than that. And again, it was probably the writing on the script. So whatever. And as a completely minor thing, but
the acting as a whole, was really, really good. From Chalamet to Zendaya to, is that how you say it? Zendaya?
Yeah, Zendaya.
Rebecca, the actress that plays Jessica. I can't remember her name.
What is her
She
name?
was very good.
Now, what about Faith Rotha, or Fade Rotha? Psycho bald man with the daggers.
Oh, yeah.
That acting was...
Who was that?
I think he was the most recent... what's it called? What's the dude? Elvis. But I could be wrong. I don't know. I don't know the actor's name. Something Austin, maybe? Or Austin something. But he did incredible, in my opinion. Like, that was... He was a creepy guy.
Yeah,
and that was his character. So,
yeah, Javier Bardem was great in it. It just all the way through, just really, really good. And the first thing that stood out to me, I saw it in a little local yokel theater that doesn't have we didn't have recliners or anything. It's just, this little theater in Dixon, Tennessee, our only theater in Dixon, Tennessee. So, but the sound, I don't know if it's, this is maybe a little quick detour on I guess, redneck sound.
Okay.
But, so, you have like the stereotypical in the South is for me anyway, is a pickup truck with like KC lights just blaring bass music, like really loud thumping bass music. Like it's a big emphasis on sound. I guess they take that to the theater as well because the picture is okay. It's not IMAX or anything like that, but the sound in this place was like, wow, okay. I guess this is theater one that I'm in right now. But it was very, very good. And the sound alone, but then the soundtrack, I know, was it Hans Zimmer?
Hans Zimmer.
Did the soundtrack for it.
The man, the myth, the legend.
Yeah. So I wouldn't expect anything less from him. But just the sound, like the sound of the sandworm thumping and its heartbeat, the sound that it makes when it reverberates back. It's just everything about that movie is really, really good sound-wise.
Yeah. Acting, I agree with everything you said. Sound was incredible. I know a thing or two about sound, and I have no notes on it. I mean, Hans Zimmer did a great thing with the soundtrack. It really felt like in the the religious zealot style scenes or themed scenes or whatever, part of the plot, like, you know, you can tell the inspiration is probably from the Middle East, maybe Muslim or Islam, I guess. And I don't know, but they did a great job with the soundtrack, making it feel alien, but also somewhat familiar. And so just so much of it was just this work of art as far as a film goes, you know, the cinematography, the sound, the acting, like it all came together exceptionally well.
Yeah. And the cinematics, I think, is the next point of interest. I know that you had talked about how you had mentioned that you were like, God, just modern day movies and these fantasies just don't have to seem these big broad, they don't paint these big broad pictures. And this movie, in particular Dune 2, has these big epic set pieces of just war and not even necessarily war, but just these big broad strokes of the desert and the sandworm riding and things like that were just incredible to watch and see play out. But
I know that I did mention that last episode, and then Tempest and I were talking, and he's like, well, the examples you gave were movie versus TV show, and TV show's budget and modus operandi is always different, so you're not going to get that. And he's got a point. But I did then say, I'm thinking too, also, you compare these two Dune movies to like Disney's Star Wars trilogy that they did with Rey and Finn and Poe and, you know, the sequels. And they're just, in those movies, there's not these long, wide establishing shots of just the scope and scale of the stuff happening. There might be one or two here and there. I'm thinking like maybe one or two in the Rise of Skywalker at the very end with all the ships, and those are neat, but the storytelling just feels a lot more claustrophobic, I guess, whereas Dune, it felt the storytelling was just this vast thing, as vast as the sand dunes of Arrakis, like, and you're getting those, and it helps because you're dealing with in Dune these massive organisms of the sandworms, or just the massive scale of, you know, making this desert feel like this endless sea of sand. And so that's, you know, maybe part of the way the world is captured or the stories being told about that world. But even still, you know, like I'm thinking back to the Marvel like Infinity War or Endgame. And now Endgame had that final big fight where they finally defeat Thanos. And there were some big wide moments, I think, you know, in particular when all the monsters or whatever are coming through the portals, and then you know, whatever. That was that, you know, that's part of it. But like the entirety of Dune just felt like this long and vast film, and they weren't afraid to leave a camera sitting on a particular thing for 10 or more seconds instead of these fast cuts that you get with modern, again, I can't say TV because Tempest will call me out, and he's too for good point, because, you know, the TV shows are different, and maybe that's a part, maybe this whole rant is part of why TV's more popular nowadays than... Well,
it breaks down into budget too.
Yeah,
and also you have to think, I could think of one other example of a TV show that brings out these large epic scale stuff, not necessarily all the time because of budget restraints, but because of people buying in so much that they had, and this is what Peter Jackson had at the Lord of the Rings, and the number of different people that they had for volunteer work that would come in and dress up and basically just be part of the movie. Greg Nicotero from The Walking Dead had a lot of that because of his fame as a horror zombie guy from way back in the Day of the Dead and stuff. He had fans that would come to Georgia and basically play the part of the zombies for basically free. And that sort of like stand-in work is not cheap. Like, you know, when you hire any actor, you got to hire them and pay them. But you have, you know, these available people. What do they call that?
I think it's just stand-ins. There is a term, and I can't remember.
Yeah, I can't think. It's whatever. Well, let's call them stand-ins. But yeah, all these stand-in actors that they could basically just have for volunteer work and be a part of a large, you know, when they have the Rohirrim up on that hill, a lot of those people were not necessarily actors. They were just, you know, volunteers that they strapped on. Of course, they had to, you know, suit them up and give them weapons and a horse and all that kind of stuff.
Hope you can ride a horse.
Yeah, but they had all of the people from New Zealand would volunteer horses and stuff too. So they had all of this stuff going on that was beneficial for both the film and the people that got to work on all this, you know, that loved Lord of the Rings or loved, you know, The Walking Dead and Greg Nicotero's work. So there's a little bit of that, but you know, I completely understand. This movie had, I'm sure they didn't have volunteers or stand-ins for this movie. I have no idea where they shot it, but I think part of it
on Arrakis, maybe.
Yeah, on Arrakis. Like. But they had, you know, a combination. I know they built sets and did all of that stuff. There's one thing that the guy from Funcom that did an interview was saying that they've been working with Legendary and got to go on set for the first Dune movie and got to see all the stuff. And it was basically working, their art directors are working with the art directors from the movie. So there's going to be a lot of stuff that it's going to look similar in the game. But anyway, game aside, yeah, the costumes and set pieces in the movie were particularly great. I know that I saw a piece on what Frank Herbert originally pictured a lot of the stuff in the movie. Like, number one, Spice is blue in the books. I didn't know if you knew that, which doesn't make any sense. Like, why would Spice be blue? The liquid that they drink in the movies, the water of life that they get from the sandworms, that's blue. So at least there's a little bit of a callback. But to make Spice blue would be kind of weird. Like, it would just look like
meth. Everyone's seen Breaking Bad, so Kristen.
Yeah, or it would look like, you know, you drop those little blue pellets and stuff, or the little like a fish tank. Those blue pellets in a fish tank. That's the way it would look. Like the same would look weird.
They didn't really show the spice. Like, I guess it was like what, like an orangish, goldish thing.
Yeah, kind of a goldish tint.
And that makes more sense, you know.
And they say it tastes like cinnamon too, which that's what it looks like. If it does, I would really enjoy spice.
No, like, so maybe
fact,
like
I want some right now.
You could make the claim that like under a certain light, you know, come across blue. But yeah, I mean,
I don't know.
There's cinematic reasons those type of changes get made.
Yeah, but like the ornithopters were supposed to have wings or look like birds, sort of, I think, in the books, and so they took a lot of because a lot of the stuff was basically late 60s sci-fi. Yeah. You know, that type of so they kind of went, let's just make it a little bit more industrial and realistic, and so they went that route, thank God.
Yeah. But you said costumes, and I wanted to touch on that because I agree with you, and this might be getting into a very tiny bit what we're going to talk about immediately after this movie discussion. But like every single costume in this film felt like it belonged in that world, or felt like I was able to suspend disbelief for every single one. And the other time that's happened in cinema has been Lord of the Rings, you know, Peter Jackson's movie. So like, you know, all of the Fremen outfits or armor or whatever it is, like that made sense. The ridiculous Harkonnen helmets and stuff, like it fit the world and the culture. And then you get into the stuff that I don't know the princess's name, but Florence Pugh's costumes with all the silver dagger looking type stuff. Like that's really neat, but she, you know, it makes sense.
Bad by good.
Yeah. That's bad, man.
Bad, man. Like Michael Jackson.
People
bad.
don't say that anymore.
I was going to say a word after that, but I cut myself off.
This is a family show. No.
Rhymes with sass.
But then the most notable one of that for me was when Jessica becomes the Reverend Mother, not Reverend Mother, the
Reverend Mother.
Is that what it is for the Fremen? I guess I got confused because that other Bene Gesserit lady is a Reverend Mother, the one that's like consulting with the Emperor and Florence and her character.
Yeah, Christopher Walken.
So there's multiple Reverend Mothers, I guess. Is that kind of how this goes?
I guess so.
But yeah, her costume, Jessica's costume in that was fantastic, especially near the end. And it's just very like those type of costumes where they have like the elongated heads with the veils and stuff just are very creepy. I guess unnerving maybe.
Yeah.
But they fit well.
Yeah, that was the one thing that I was always impressed with, and I hate always to bring up Destiny 2, like being a dead horse, but the veil, when they unleash, or they unveil, excuse another pun, it's pun day.
Pun day.
Yeah. But it's, when they, that sort of aesthetic from both the pyramids and Destiny 2, it has a lot of that Dune
Bene Gesserit
feel.
Bene Gesserit.
Yeah, like if you think about like going into that pyramid, especially
or Harkonnen too. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Which I'm like, okay, if this is, if you can kind of see, like, and even the I can't remember the name of where the Fremen live. Sietch, is that what they call them?
The Sietches, yeah.
That's
like
like when you can, if you can kind of go into that in a game, that would be wild, fun, interesting, like all that kind of stuff. But just the costume set pieces, and the biggest thing for me though was just how interesting in both politically and with the religious, but also this. I know that Frank Herbert was a huge fan of basically, and this is almost a sci-fi movie without a lot of sci-fi at all, if you think about it, because I know from Dune lore, there's a little bit of a lore lesson for even maybe some Dune fans that maybe not know all of this, but there was so they got to a point, there are no computers, if you think about it, in the Dune universe.
And there's a reason because, for that.
Yeah, okay, so you know this, that there was the
Great Machine Crusade or something.
Yeah, the Great Machine Crusade, and they basically created all these, what I think they call them thinking machines, which are basically computers, and an AI, and they basically took over the world, or at least a world or something, universe. And there was a big revolt, religious based, and they squashed it, and then they basically made it almost a commandment throughout the universe that, you were not to tamper with any kind of AI. It was forbidden. So that's why you don't see a whole lot of you see technology, but you don't ever see any kind of computers or AI or any of that in the universe. So, and then you have also this really fascinating thing with the shields in the universe, and that you can only get through a shield with a slow, methodical attack. Which at first I didn't understand, and then I finally got it. I'm like, oh, okay, that's why you don't really see any guns or anything, because it'd be pointless. And everyone is fighting hand to hand. So you have this almost medieval, even pre-medieval kind of dagger or sword combat only. Really, that's the only thing you ever really see in the game, other than, the ornithopters shooting rockets down below. And so
now are those shields like only for the rich? Because I'm guessing obviously the Harkonnen soldiers did not have them. I remember many, or the Fremen didn't have them, certainly.
No.
So
or only must have been a pretty expensive technology, I'm guessing, because you really only saw them on the I can't
Fade Ratha.
Well, he uses that one in the gladiator pit, but then there's the soldiers from the Emperor, the Sardaukans or whatever they're called, guys that float down. They use them, and then of course the house, Paul, the different houses. I'm guessing, Paul and Duncan, and all those guys. But so but I think the biggest thing was the prophecies and religion and all this stuff, and especially in the second one where you have this, and I was wondering when they were going to get to it, but you have this false prophecy that was basically, the Bene
Gesserit.
Yeah, the Bene Gesserits basically instill as almost missionaries. So you have this, just so many different levels of philosophy and religion and all this stuff that really kind of makes the world very, very interesting to me. And it just kind of watching everything unfold was like, all right, this is really good. So.
Yeah, and they did a good job. And again, like, this is Fremen religion, Fremen beliefs for who knows how long, right? And with the help of, or I guess Paul didn't really want it, but Jessica, being Bene Gesserit, is able to learn what their religion is and manipulate them into seeing Paul as the Messiah, and then he becomes that figure, and that's kind of what we see by the end of the movie. And it's a very fascinating watch to, one, as someone who understands our modern day, our world religion in our world, not Dune world. To then watch how it's portrayed in this movie, and just to see that point from Paul just being an outsider to becoming the Messiah of their whole, race of Fremen people, is very fascinating, done exceptionally well. Jessica plays, like you said, a very manipulative but striking and powerful character for that whole, religion piece to transpire. And then Paul plays the unwilling, originally unwilling part of being the Messiah. And then I really liked Zendaya's, just how against it she was. She wanted Paul to be Paul, but she's watching him become the savior of her people. And it's, and again, at the very end, when Paul says, like, he'll take the hand of Florence, I literally can't remember the name, so I'm just going to use the actress's name. I can't remember her. And that's character. A completely political thing that is so far above just the Fremen and Arrakis. But Zendaya over there, her acting in that scene was incredible, because you can tell she's like devastated. She doesn't understand, that's not the way her people do things. And so to watch this man who has pledged his love and allegiance to you go and make that decision, say those things, like, naturally it's going to be like she can't fathom it. But he's playing, 3D chess, and her mind is on, Connect 4, which I'm not saying she's basic, and the religion and the beliefs of the Fremen are basic, but he's got the fate of the universe in mind, and she, of course, is in love with the Paul that she met and got to know before he became the Muad'Dib.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Very, 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 very good. I'm impressed. It only got me more excited for, number one, the next movie. Number two, the prospect of this survival MMO coming out. Would be, hell, I might even play PvP. You said it here. You heard it here first. I might actually play PvP in this.
You got to at least try it, right? So
yeah, I don't know. I don't even know what kind of character I would make, but we'll have to wait and see. I know that even in even if you're just a PvEer, there are going to be ways you can try to get materials, because there's going to be materials in this PvP zone that are highly sought after. I mean, that's kind of why the PvPers are there probably in the first place. It's how all this works. But you can make, like, you can basically be a crafter. You can craft maps for the factions and stuff for, you know, the PvPers can buy to maybe get the upper hand, or things like that, or, you know, devices and things you can craft and sell out and to the market. So it'd be interesting to see how all this plays out. But anyway, so let's get into this article, because this is
it's a good concept.
You had touched on.
I did. I don't know if I said it last episode. I think I did. But I have since expanded upon it, and it's this concept that this Dune trilogy, of which we've only had 2 of the 3 movies, is the modern day Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy. So that was kind of my hot take. I didn't elaborate a ton on it, and I'll let you go into the article in a bit. But I guess to further expand my thought on that specifically, it's just that the adaptation and the quality of, I guess, the 3 pieces of that, well, adaptation being one of them, but the adaptation piece, the cinematics piece, and then the acting, all of these things have come together to really make this a serious, you know, marvel to behold as far as film goes. And that was very much what was happening in 1999 to 2000, whenever Return of the King came out, you know. And I guess really another striking piece about this is, like, you go and watch Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy, then you watch the Hobbit trilogy, and I know the Hobbit was written for kids, and so the tone is different, but the way, like, even the beginning scenes in the Shire were just, in the Hobbit, were just different. Like, there's a serious air to the Lord of the Rings trilogy that's there from the beginning to the end, where every character is, like, bought in on the mission and everything, and taking and, you know, the actors are taking it seriously, all the stuff. That is the same vibe I get from this Dune trilogy. So that was kind of my thoughts on it, but this article goes into a bit more. So what does it got?
It's a really, really good article. I like the way that they break, you know, what do Dune and Lord of the Rings have in common. Both Frodo and Paul suffer from an evil burden that no one else can carry. You know, whether it's a ring or a prophecy that they necessarily do not want to fulfill.
Or your entire family getting murdered.
Or your entire family getting murdered. And then, both of the movies examine the concept of the effects of absolute power on an individual. Just, you know, I like that there's a very interesting point here that Dune will change sci-fi like Lord of the Rings changed fantasy. I guess I could see that. But of course, then you have Star Wars that would factor into that. Like, well, maybe Star Wars kind of already did that.
Yeah, but that was so long ago, right? Like the 70s.
You can only really consider the first trilogy of Star Wars an actual game changer, I suppose. The rest of it is just follow up, or, you know, I don't think both the prequels or the current iteration have really done
the
much
prequels. Maybe in the visual effects department, I think, were a big part of that, but also at the same time was the Lord of the Rings coming out, which did use visual effects as well as practical effects. So hard to say.
But I think what they're getting at, the fact that this is that we just spent a good amount of time talking about, that this is kind of almost a perfect sci-fi movie, especially Dune Part 2. Dune Part 1 is very good, and obviously you need to really watch the first one to get, it's kind of the
understand the stakes, at least, of the second.
Yeah, this is the Empire Strikes Back of maybe the Dune series. So we'll see. I think that What do they give this? I know the Rotten Tomato scores are through the roof.
Yeah.
I think it's like 93 right now or something like
Both
that.
Both critics and audience are in the 90s, so which is great.
It's tremendous. If you haven't seen it, you need to definitely go see it.
And I think like also it's easy to make the comparison of the length. Fellowship of the Ring, Two Towers, Return of the King, very long movies, not even including the extended editions. You've got Dune 1 and Dune 2. I don't know how long Dune 1 is. I don't remember. But Dune Part 2 being 2 hours and 47 minutes, that's long. Right up there with Return of the King or Two Towers or whatever. And so it's really easy to draw the parallels between Peter Jackson's work on this and Denis Villeneuve's work on this Dune trilogy. And just how, good of a film spectacle it is. I mean, adaptation aside, there's of course things that they left out, I'm sure. And eventually I'm going to read the first Dune book this year, and I'll know firsthand what those things might be. But yeah, it's just, I think we're watching right now. We're in the middle of the next big trilogy or the next big sci-fi adaptation spectacle, and it'll be interesting to see because 20 years ago I think Return of the King would have been out. We would have just finished that trilogy 20 years ago. We're probably all like, oh yeah, that was amazing, like we're still going to be talking about that 20 years from now. Sure enough, we are. And I would say that's probably the same thing with this Dune trilogy, is where people are still
and I hope
talking about
that
it.
this will further keep these filmmakers going, okay, well, maybe Peter Jackson isn't the only one that can do this sort of thing. Now that the ball is kind of, the torch has been passed, or necessarily passed, but he took the torch and was like, all right, I'm doing something with this, and made these movies. So who knows what we'll see in the future. Maybe this is a big, and the fact that this, the first was a fantasy, this is a sci-fi. Maybe we go back to a fantasy thing with a new director and some new crazy trilogy of movies that kind of knock our socks off. So I hope that this is a good
Wheel of Time.
Thing.
No, I'm just kidding.
Well, Amazon's picked that
and that's
up,
the thing. It's like you don't see what you see nowadays is a lot of adaptations that are TV shows, and on paper it makes sense, right? Because you're adapting 500
very
pages into a 2.5 hour movie, or in this case, 2.5 hour long movies. Or could you do it in 10 to 12 episodes, which turns out to be roughly 10 hours, maybe 9 hours. Obviously the choice seems to make sense to choose the TV show. But for whatever reason, TV show adaptations just haven't landed like these movie adaptations have. I mean, think Harry Potter even. Harry Potter was a book for each movie. Nope. A movie for each book until the last one, which had 2 parts, which I think was heavily influenced by the success of Lord of the Rings and, all that stuff. And, and they did there's most people don't have complaints on Harry Potter's adaptation. I always want to say adaptation because that sounds more, but it's not, it's adaptation. And, that was a movie and it was very successful. Of course, 7 books, but we're talking like 15 books, right, for Wheel of Time. So I don't know that that's feasible. And the TV show's current, so.
And the TV show it's pretty good. I mean, it's not. It would make a much better film, but it would. By film, I mean films. It would take like 15 films or
maybe
20
we get an
films
Aragon adaptation, a proper one this time.
Oh God,
who knows? I don't know.
Not the Sean Connery dragon one.
Yeah.
Was that who did the dragon? Aragon?
I don't know. I just know
I'm thinking like the Mistborn trilogy. Sanderson, or the Name of the Wind, or
I was just trying to think of something that's like older. Although Name of the Wind is that was early 2000s, wasn't it? He has to finish that before anyone can make an
Well,
adaptation.
that's not true.
about it.
George R. R. Martin hasn't finished Game of Thrones.
That is fair.
They started out well, and then
And then they got past where he finished, and they're like, what do we do? Turns out you can't.
We'll just throw the scripts in the air and throw a dart at it.
Yeah.
But yeah, who knows what we could see in the future.
Yeah.
You know, I would love it. A Dark Tower series that wasn't that stupid one off with, nothing against McConaughey or certainly Idris Elba, but that movie was terrible. Like that shouldn't have ever been put to script. But actual Dark Tower trilogy or quadrilogy or however long it would take for them to make that would be pretty astounding. But we'll see. I'm perfectly okay waiting for this movie to come out, and we'll just go from there. So
I was looking around at my bookshelf to see if there's any other. Of course, I have over there The Name of the Wind and whatever the second book is. Haven't read it yet. But then behind me is the whole Witcher series, and that's a whole conversation we could have too about.
Yeah, that's a different conversation.
But then I did want to say is final thing on this before we jump into a little bit about Weathertop. I will say that, like, as far as TV show adaptations that worked, the Series of Unfortunate Events, which is a young adult novel series. I think there's 13 or 14 books. 13 sounds right because of the theming of the whole thing. And they originally did a movie with Jim Carrey as Count Olaf, and that kind of was meh. But then they did a show with Neil Patrick Harris as Count Olaf, and they did the whole story beginning to end, and I think each episode was one of the books, and they did a really good job with that, in my opinion. Like, and it's been decades since I read those, but from what I recall, and when I watched this with the wife, like, they did a really good job of adapting that, and that's no easy feat because that story is all over the place as far as mystery and, there's 13 different things that, locations and all this stuff. So, yeah. So that's, I agree with everything you've said too, is that, one, this is a really spectacular, well, Dune Part 2 specifically, very spectacular movie. Great theater experience, like you were saying at the very beginning, with just glued to your seat or glued to the screen and neglecting half of your popcorn. So
yeah.
Anything else you want to add on Dune before we dive in a bit to Weathertop?
No. Let's go to the Bree area.
All right, class, settle down. It's time for book reports. Shiloh, why don't you kick us off?
She said your name this time, so you have to go first.
Oh, thank you. Well, I'm probably just going to throw it back at you, but
okay, that's fair.
Weathertop. Well, I guess
Weathertop.
I have not been keeping up with the reading.
Okay.
I have not had the time.
Fair.
But of course, I have read them a number of times. So, but it's not necessarily fresh in my mind. But I have the decent amount of knowledge, and I know of the geographic locations, and I can kind of throw in a few little facts here and there of the area and perhaps the history. And but yeah. So you wanted to go from Weathertop to Rivendell, right?
Yeah.
So
we touched last episode briefly on Bree. Of course, the focus was the enigma that is Tom Bombadil and the Old Forest.
right.
But then Bree is kind of the interlude between that whole thing. It's the first, aside from Crick Hollow, which is very brief. It's the first time we're introduced to another character that's going to be a mainstay, which is Strider or Aragorn. And it's important to touch on those, that moment specifically, I think, because of his part even at Weathertop and talking about it with the four hobbits and stuff. But with Bree specifically, I know that we touched on how Merry goes wandering and two of the Black Riders or the Nazgul interact with him. I don't remember what they say in the book or what Merry says happens, but I do know that in the movie they just kind of saunter near him and he just faints and passes out or something. And in the movie, I mean the animated movie, not Peter Jackson's movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they would have done a little killing then because they're a lot scarier in Peter Jackson's trilogy. But I really liked Bree. Again, Strider's kind of the key person here, I think. Is to get into Weathertop, but Bill Ferny, I think they refer to him as unsavory, like an unsavory character. He's kind of like the nosy person of Bree, and ironic that they end up buying the pony from him because him and the Nazgul, I guess, let out all the ponies of all the stables at the inn, and so the only pony left for purchase is Bill's one, who is, and they name him Bill, which is hilarious. But yeah, so Strider is obviously Aragorn. Is he, of all the Fellowship people, which we haven't gotten there yet, but like, how does he rank for you? Is he one of your favorite characters, or you just kind of, I mean, I guess maybe
easily.
The obvious answer is yes, right? But
yeah.
You haven't necessarily read that far yet recently, but we talked, I think, last episode about the Aragorn depiction
in the movie versus the book.
Yes.
Yeah. And that the movie was better than the book.
Yes.
As far as like how he's introduced, and I agree totally.
Yes.
He's a lot more stoic and
reserved, I think, is a good word too. But so Strider being very important to Weathertop, it starts there in Bree, and just his interactions with the hobbits at the Prancing Pony is really interesting to me. And then his interactions with Butterbur, and then Knob and Bob and all that. But what's fascinating to me, and this is kind of a bit from Rivendell and the Council of Elrond, but how the hobbits and Butterbur were very apprehensive towards Strider. Of course, that changes for the hobbits. But then they talk about it in the Council of Elrond, how Butterbur was very concerned that the hobbits left with Strider. And Gandalf is like, that's the greatest news I've ever heard. And so, it makes a lot of sense, of course, knowing the full picture here. But leaving Bree, going with Strider, they're making their way towards Rivendell, and Weathertop is, like, I think they said like a 10 day to 12 day journey from Rivendell's, a 10 to 12 day journey from Weathertop.
Okay. And
Weathertop is this ancient tower. I don't know the lore details on it. Our friend, I almost said Ardeth, or the British, and the New Zealand was coming out. Our friend Ardeth could probably shed some light, and whenever we get him on an episode, he can go correct all of our little lore trimmings.
I know some real
so that'll be nice.
Rusty, maybe. I'm just trying to think. There's a good deal of, I think it's an ancient Duodane tower.
Yes, that sounds right.
And I'm trying to, I think I honestly, I don't know, but there are a lot of tie-ins with why it was destroyed. I think the original war happened, like
something with the King of Angmar, of course, who we know is the Witch King. Yeah,
came through and basically destroyed that tower. So that's why it's in ruins when Frodo and Aragorn and the hobbits show up. And I think it's in the books, and I'll remember this in the movie. Oh, I guess it is in the movies. You see the light. You see like I think they're camping outside, and you see all these flashes of light, and that's Gandalf basically running into the ring race
because
on
he
Weathertop, because he leaves the note, or he leaves a note in the form of a rune, I think, right?
I don't remember that specifically, but having just read the Council of Elrond, he does mention that he did engage with the Nazgul at Weathertop prior to them getting there, because he ends up in Rivendell 2 days before they do.
Yeah.
So I don't know exactly on that, but that I like that call out. Another thing specifically is that when Strider and the hobbits get there, it's a lot more of a, like, they're able to sit down and relax for a while in the books compared to the movies. Yeah. And then for some reason, I can't seem to recall the exact moment that the Ringwraiths show up to it. I do know that Strider goes out to look around, but it's not like because of a campfire or anything like that, like the movie shows, that like the Ringwraiths, oh, there's a campfire, let's go and investigate. I'm pretty sure the Ringwraiths in the book have just been stalking them for so long that it was going to be inevitable that they met up at Weathertop, and that was kind of a point that was made, is that like they weren't going to be able to keep running from them forever. So and then of course Frodo sees the shadows and then puts on the ring to hide, and bad move turns out. But yeah, so Weathertop is a very pivotal moment in the book, knowing how the whole story goes, because it is the whole reason he ends up having to leave Middle-earth at the very end of it all. Getting stabbed with that blade. And then what's interesting, they don't talk about this in the movie, but he gets stabbed with it, and a piece of it breaks off in his arm or shoulder or whatever. And of course they do mention or show it in the movie, as it is mentioned in the book, that like the blade, all but the handle, turns to dust when Aragorn picks it up. Yeah. But they don't mention the little piece, as far as I can recall. And it's important because I guess like they talk about it once he gets to Rivendell, about how they finally had to they dug like the piece out of his shoulder or something that was causing him it was going to turn him into a Ringwraith or whatever. But the most striking thing about this is obviously Weathertop happens. And I want to say we talked about this last episode as well, but how the key difference here is that in the movie, once he gets stabbed, he sort of instantly starts turning into a Ringwraith and is non-responsive and is not much of a chatty Cathy at all. But then in the book, it's like business as usual. So they leave Weathertop, the Ringwraiths scatter, and Strider specifically makes mention or hints at the fact that they're probably waiting for you, Frodo, to turn into a Ringwraith to bring the ring to them. And that is fascinating to me, because of course you don't, like, all we know is that in the movie, if you just watch a movie, Aragorn shows up and fends them off, and then they just vanish for a while. Although it's very quick, so you go from that to him and the hobbits searching for Kingsfoil in the woods, and then they meet Arwen, and then the chase is on. So it's all compacted. But it's fascinating to me that there's a good deal of pages between Weathertop and when Glorfindel shows up. But yeah, any other thoughts you have specifically on Weathertop or the whole knife in the dark, the whole Morgul blade incident?
I don't think so. There's just one little thing I wanted to comment on that I can't remember. I know for a fact that it's in the animated series, but there's you don't really hear. Do you hear the ringwraiths talk at all in Peter Jackson's movies? I don't think you do. I don't think they say anything. The Witch King does.
Yes. Are you talking in that moment specifically, or at all? Because they obviously talk to
really.
The Shire. They say Shire Baggins.
Oh yeah, Shire.
But then they talk to Arwen after she's crossed the River Bruinen, or the fjord, whatever. But they mentioned something like "bring the halfling to us." But I don't know if they do at Weathertop, and I think they do in the book. So that's a good, or maybe the animated movie as well.
The animated, I just remember as a kid, even a teenager, just being enthralled by the ringwraiths basically calling out to Frodo, which in essence, they don't really call out to Frodo. They're really actually talking to the ring itself and then saying, come back to Mordor, we will take you. And so they're basically, And I always thought that was pretty haunting. And they keep reiterating that over and over and over again. And, Frodo's like, no, just leave me alone.
He almost gives in the books, and they really drive that point home. But yeah, they're talking to him like that on the flight to the ford.
And he hears that, and I just remember, for a long time I was like, oh, well, are they talking to him? And I don't think they're talking to him. I think they're just talking to the ring.
Yeah,
they're kind of a hive mind mentality. Another point that I always really loved is the scene in Bree, and I think it's in both Jackson's movies and the animated and also the books, where they're in Bree, they're sleeping, they're about to make their escape, and so they pad up their beds to make it seem like they're sleeping to fool the Nazgul to come. And the Nazgul, when they raise up all their swords to basically stab the hobbits, they do it in unison, like almost as a hive mind, and then they stab their beds repeatedly. So you never really see any of them act out of their own free will, because obviously they don't have any. So it's just really interesting to see that play out throughout as a constant theme. The ringwraiths don't have any free will. They're just serving the ring to serve Sauron, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Rinse and repeat. But
they're utterly enslaved by him too. So, and the movie, I guess, they don't explain that. Gandalf does say that many times when he talks about the Nazgul in Rivendell, and or when they just talk about the Black Riders. And so that's you do get more of that from the book. And then let's see, the flight to Rivendell with Glorfindel's horse. So they stumble across Glorfindel, or rather he finds them, and then the chase, they load Frodo up on the horse, and then the chase is on. And there is a key moment where Frodo mentions something about if Glorfindel and him leave Strider and the other three hobbits by themselves, that they'd be in great peril. And Glorfindel says to Frodo, actually, I think they would be in less peril if we left them. Which is hilarious, because of course, the ringwraiths don't care about them. And that is something that I think is maybe not done as well as far as adaptation goes in the Peter Jackson trilogy. And I think it's partially because in the movie we see them cut the head off of that hobbit or whatever when they enter the Shire, or they just slice at him with the sword as they're galloping on by. And so they're and then of course we see them stabbing the beds, and so they're displayed as this killing machine, each of them. And in the book, obviously they're only sole purpose is to get the ring. And so when Glorfindel tells Frodo that, it really struck a chord with me, because I was like, yeah, you know, that makes sense. Like they're not there to wage war against the Shire and everyone in Bree and all of that. Yeah. They just want the ring. If they were there to wage war, they'd bring an army, and they're not, and they didn't. So like they're not going to just stop to fight Strider and 3 hobbits, because the ring's getting out of their reach. And so that's something that I really was like, that's a good point. Yeah, you better run, Frodo, because all your friends are in danger. So, I don't know that I have too much more, because there's a lot of pages in this section, from like the Bree to Weathertop and Weathertop to the Ford, but it's not as mysterious, or there's not a lot of these whimsical things that happen like there was in the Old Forest, or even in Hobbiton leading up to the whole leaving of the Shire. Yeah. Because it is more, they're wandering through the wilderness, you know, with Strider, and the Weathertop is kind of the key moment there. So do you have anything else you want to add, or?
No, it's the chase and not dying.
Yes.
You know, don't die on me, Frodo, that sort of, you know, mechanic that makes it fun and interesting, and kind of keeps you clinging to the edge of your seat. You're like, oh no, what's going to happen? And the ring race are definitely formidable. And they look terrifying, and even in the animated series when I was growing up, but they were like, oh, I know they don't, particularly now, they don't look as bad as
but
Peter
back
Jackson's.
then.
But yeah, there was like, for an animated series, it looked pretty creepy. Yeah, and in my imagination, they were always creepy like that too. So
especially the trippy scene with Legolas and Frodo in the anime movie, and the psychedelics that's going on as they're chasing them.
I think that is another point with the ring races. You see I think they come in initially with holding their swords to their chest too, in Jackson's movie. Isn't that at Weathertop?
And that's what I said, like,
they're coming into Frodo in his ring realm, or whatever you want to call it, and I think that's the way they approach him, is with their swords to their chest.
Yeah, and that was a point that I made last episode, where I like the way they're portrayed in Peter Jackson's movie as opposed to the books, because and maybe it's because in the books there's a lot of expose about why they became what they became, but in the movie, and they don't have the time to talk about that in the movie, and so with them, kind of, they just act like knights, like well-trained, seasoned kings of old, with all those old muscle memory mannerisms, you know, holding the sword up very I don't want to say officially, but you know what I mean? Like they just regal. Have this regal nature to them in the movies, and that's one of the things that I think lends to that, is showing up with the swords like that, or when Arwen says, if you want him, come and take him, and they all draw their swords at the same time. There's a lot of that that really helps drive it home. It is
kind of a shame that they don't really, there's a little thing that Cate Blanchett says as Galadriel, kind of introducing the keepers of the rings, 3 to the elven kings, 5 to the dwarf lords, and 9 to the kings of men. And she goes into that little speech, but they don't really correlate the fact that the 9 the 9 kings of men are now these guys over here. Yeah. That there's never really a direct correlation. There might have been some hints there, but it's never like smack a normal person in the face going, oh yeah, those guys that were just in that scene, the old kings, those are now those guys,
Yes.
Just heads up.
And the book, obviously, I think Gandalf mentions it, or Gandalf or Strider at some point mentions that those kings, they were all kings once. And I know in the movie, Aragorn specifically does say that. He's like, they were men once, they were kings once, or something.
Okay. Maybe it does. I don't know.
Well, yes, but it doesn't correlate to the fact that they were the 9 kings that were given rings by Sauron. Okay. Also, what isn't correlated, and this is getting into, but you've mentioned it, but this is kind of getting into the Council of Elrond, is that the 3 rings that the elves had weren't made or touched by Sauron. He taught them how to make rings.
Yeah. Which is shown in the Rings of Power.
Yes, which I need to finish, but he specifically didn't make their rings. And Elrond says that, in fact, the power of their rings isn't to wage war, it's to heal, or like it's more of a benevolent reason. Not like, you give these rings of power to men, we're going to use them to wage war and conquer. So I think that's kind of the point. And of course that just enslaved them further to Sauron. Yeah. So nice. Hopefully we did it justice. Again, we're no experts. We're just reading the books, watching the movies. And I mean, this is like one of the greatest fantasy series of all time. So yeah, worth talking about. Now, do my eyes deceive me, Shiloh? Do we have a little special something?
Perhaps.
All right,
Pick a card, any card.
Well, don't mind if I do. If I can open a damn box.
I know I hit it and you weren't ready, but that's okay. I do like this little the deck of many things. Yeah. I always think of Maik the liar. What's he say? He's the one. No, is it him that gives you the loot boxes or whatever, the loot crates?
I think, yeah, that might be him. But he's also the one in ESO where you would find him at random locations, and he would always have some little parable or something to tell you. Yeah. Kind of that mysterious
but specifically the one that does the loot crates, it says like, maybe not pick a card, but he says something about cards.
Yeah. Thank you for spending all your hard-earned money on these crown crates.
Khajiit has crown crates if you have wares.
Khajiit has wares.
Yeah.
You have gold?
You have USD because I take USD.
You have credit card?
Good. You're going to need that.
You're going to need a lot of money.
All right. Classic.
All right. So let's see. I got to pull up the old
list.
The old list of things here.
Now, I will say for the listener, if you've ever listened to podcasts, which is a very bizarre statement to say while you're listening to one. But,
yeah, that's pretty bizarre.
But that's par for the course with me. A lot of stuff is, faked on air, faked excitement, or wow, I didn't know that. In fact, I did. I've read the notes. Specifically with this deck of many things, I refuse to open the document Shiloh has put out on our share drive that has a list of everything that they do. So everything that we do with this deck of many things on the show is a surprise to me, at least, as well as you. Yes, you.
Due to the magic of RNG. All right, so
no, I just mean RNG, I don't even know what they do. Like I don't even have the list of what they do. You don't know the
questions.
Yeah, which is great.
So, ooh.
What do we get?
The key.
The key.
Ooh. So, question for the key is, what would your dream house look like?
Okay.
Interesting. Neither one of us are homeowners. I have been in the past.
It's impossible to nowadays.
Definitely, yeah. And now I'm teetered on that, and I'm slowly getting away from that because prices, number one, and two, I want to travel, and I can't really have my cake and eat it too right now. So,
fair. But this is a dream house, so
yeah.
I'll go briefly because I think my style for House is more of a brutalist modern interior. You go on YouTube and watch, amazing house videos or whatever. There's a lot of what you find in the ultra rich is a very modern and simple look, and brutalist meaning, I guess, I'm no architect or designer, but from what I understand, it's very harsh, like colors, and harsh meaning like maybe dark. So harsh colors, lots of angles, or just like 90-degree angle, like flat surfaces, instead of having a lot, maybe more of a fluid look of a flow. If you've ever played Control, the oldest house is a example of brutalist architecture. And so my dream home, I guess, would be something that sort of marries the brutalist, dark concrete with steel and wood, but also does a good job of interior decorating, I guess. I don't know.
Right.
Without getting into like exact room size and this is how many car garage I want. Yeah. That's kind of the look.
Yeah.
But maybe not so brutalist that you would feel depressed living in it.
Yeah.
But elements of that.
Okay. All right. Mine would be probably just a variation of almost like a hobbit hole, really, to be quite honest. It would. I love that. It would have a lot of wood.
Oh, yeah.
Very cozy. Definitely lots of fireplaces, but I would also have like technology that you would need, but it would be kind of hidden, or I'd try to keep it hidden as much as I could. I definitely want one room with just a bunch of bookshelves, like to the ceiling. Maybe I think I watched, who was it that had, it was one of those shows where they, like a YouTube spot where they interview people and they go to their apartments or houses and wherever they live, like actors, famous actors.
Oh, yeah.
Stuff.
It's like Vanity Fair or...
Yeah, it might have been Vanity Fair.
Home Digest or something. Yeah, I've seen those. Like they went to...
There was one, and I don't know if it was David Harbour or...
I think so.
Somewhere. And he had a ladder with a book, for like an entire wall for like books and stuff, but he had one of those ladders that you could move around that you see, and I was like, I want that. I want a ladder for my books. Even if I never used it, it just looks cool. So just weird things like that. But definitely lots of, probably more than one fireplace, like one in the bedroom and like one for the living room. I'd probably want even one for the kitchen, I think would be dope.
You could do s'mores on it.
Yeah. S'mores in the kitchen. Well, I'd do a lot more than s'mores, but yeah, I mean, just stuff like that I think would be a lot of fun. So
that's fair. I would amend mine to say I would like a living room area. I would love to see like the vaulted ceiling brutalist style design, but then each room of the house be a different architectural design. So let's say the central room, the living room, is this brutalist big concrete wall with steel beams, a massive TV, maybe more like modern style leather couches and stuff. And then off to one side is an opening into a classic farmhouse style kitchen with open shelves and just massive counter space and everything. And then like maybe have off on another side a library built like a hobbit hole, full of cedar and wood and maybe like circular like windows and stuff. And of course it would look ugly as all sin to anyone that was like this home has no like flow between each room. Like there's no.
Your resale value wouldn't necessarily.
I would be like,
of course,
well, who cares?
my Hobbit hole wouldn't.
I'd have so much money.
Very niche market for a Hobbit hole.
Yeah,
but
you'd have so much money at this point.
Anyway, so who cares?
No, not if you're living in this. Oh, I guess if you're selling. Yeah, because it's your dream home.
Yeah,
you'd be like, I'm going to be buried in this library.
Yeah, I want to be buried in the library.
That's fair. So, well,
all right.
Anything else, Shiloh? Any about anything in this episode that you want to add?
No, I think that's it.
I like it. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, listener, for spending some time of your day to listen to us, as Shiloh put it, these two idiots talk about Dune and then Lord of the Rings. We appreciate you, and we hope that you, well, I guess we're going to say it, we hope to hear from you in the next one, but we're the ones doing all the talking. So,
so
we hope that you hear from us in the next one.
Yeah, we hope you hear from us. That'd be great.
All right. Farewell.
Questing the Multiverse is brought to you in part by Coniff Productions, How's Wood Designs, and Joel Crawford. To follow along with our adventures, please follow us on Twitter at QtM Podcast and consider joining our Discord, the link of which can be found in the show notes or in our Twitter bio. Want your questions or comments read on the show? Email us at questingthemultiverse@gmail.com. Finally, if you enjoyed this episode, please consider giving us a review or a follow wherever you listen to podcasts. Thank you for listening.